Hello. Now we're going to demonstrate how to use the model. This is the Paris-Sweet Hapless-Fit trajectory model, and we're gonna focus on the most simple condition, which is favorable condition. For this example, we're going to select only one colloid. It's gonna be simulated. We're gonna keep all the parameters by default. Notice that this colloid is relatively big. It's 2.2 micron in radius or 4.4 micron in diameter, and the conditions by default are set to be favorable. This means there is no repulsion between the collector and the colloid. More about conditions and the interactions could be found in another video about the XDLBO theory. Alright, so keep in mind that this model runs one particle at a time. It could take more time, of course, if you run more particles. So we're gonna keep everything as default, and I only change this to be one colloid. Now, to run this simulation, we're gonna run in loading mode. It means that the colloid is injected in the fluid shell of our system, and it approaches due to fluid drag mainly to the surface of the collector. And we're gonna see this in real time. Actually, we're gonna see the trajectory being simulated on the fly. So the very first thing you need to do is go to loading mode here and set output directory. Click here, and it's gonna open a Windows Explorer windows, and you can go. I'm gonna put this in my desktop, for example. I'm gonna put like a new folder, whatever. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna do this favorable, for example. Favorable. I'm gonna check this. I select this folder, and now it's loaded. And notice that I can put the name of a subfolder that's gonna be created when I run the simulation. I'm gonna put this like 4 micron, just to have a sense of which color size I'm running. And now everything is set to run, and I hit run loading simulation. Now the model starts chunking numbers, and it's gonna open this really interesting plot. What we call this the transport figure. In the transport figure, we have several parameters as a function of time, most of them. And please look at the one in the left. Here you can see this is the separation distance between colloid and collector and how it's approaching the near surface. And we can see here in this panel on top, this is the overall geometry, how the colloid is being injected and getting closer to the surface. We have color code trajectories. It means in red, the colloid is far away of the surface. In magenta, the colloid is less than 200 nanometers separation distance, and when the trajectory turns blue, it means it's in contact. And you can see now the colloid is really close to the surface, about 100 nanometer in this panel in the left. And in this panel in the bottom, notice how the colloidal force becomes really attractive. It means that van der Waals and electric double layer interactions are working to pull the colloid towards the collector, and it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it's gonna get into contact. Once the colloid is in contact, the system performs a torque balance. We can see this right here in the right panel top. We have here the adhesive and repulsive forces, and they're gonna balance until the colloid arrests. It means that there is fluid drag moving the colloid, rolling over the surface, but because of the adhesion of the surface is making the colloid harder and harder to move until both forces, in this case torques, but which are expressed as forces, they balance each other and the particle immobilizes. And that's pretty much a single simulation of a single colloid, and you can see a lot of metrics in this transport figure that I invite you to explore later on when you're looking at it. But just keep in mind that we're actually doing a really precise simulation now, and notice how the I can move this, it just happens. If we see this transport figure, they balance and we have attachment. Now everything is gonna close, the simulation is complete, and we have multiple figures here. We can open back any figure using this command right here. open existing figure, and I'm gonna open the one that was generated, should be in my desk. I put favorable 4 micron, and then I open this figure. So all the information is already saved. Oh, sorry, that wasn't that one. Going again, desktop, favorable 4 micron, and is the transport figure. Open that one, and we can take a look at this closely. Okay, so here is the history of the color translation from the injection until it immobilized on the surface. As you can see here in the overlay scale, this looks really short, and we have a highly detailed trajectory right here, and colloidal forces, as well as velocities, tangential, normal, fluid drag, normal and tangential, and finally the contact forces that are going to equilibrate. Okay, so keep in mind, this is a force and torque balance being performed on the particle with the appropriate range of interactions and different strategies depending if the colloid is far away, near to the surface, and in contact. All right, now let's take a look at the other figures that were blinking there, and we have a contact figure, for example. This contact figure indicates with a big marker, this is not the scale, where the colloid attaches to the surface, where the colloid was immobilized. And in the left panel, we have a really detailed figure, and we can see in gold, that's the colloid surface, and in red is the collector surface. And I'm gonna rotate this a little bit, and you can see this yellow ring just identifies the zone of influence of the colloid, the actual zone of the colloid that is in actual interaction, the stronger interaction with the collector. And we can see that the colloid, here we can see the curvature, is being deformed. And we can see this deformation because it's an elastic material, as this section of the colloid that looks is penetrating the surface of the collector, that's due by deformation. So we have an indication of all these elastic parameters that been playing a role in this balance. All right. Also, we can open the near surface figure. If I go to the same place, it was in my desktop, it was favorable 4 micron, and the near surface is right here. This is just a simpler figure, but what represents here, this is the collector surface, the red surface. This ring represents the equator of the colloid, and the tiny ring, the smaller ring, is the zone of influence. It's the actual nose of the colloid that's closer to the surface, where all the interactions actually are important. Far away from that ring, the interactions become really, really insignificant. All right. So what we're gonna do now to contrast this behavior is I'm going to change this to a colloid that is 10 times smaller. 2.2 10 to the minus 7. It means it's 220 nanometer in diameter, in radius. 440 nanometer in diameter is 10 times smaller than the previous case. And I'm gonna run the same thing, but I'm gonna change this to folder name to 44 nanometer, 440 nanometer. And then I just let it run. And keep in mind, this simulation is gonna take more time because smaller colloid have different response to all these physical forces that are driving in towards the surface. So as you can see, we have the same transport figure, the same panels, but now the behavior is a little bit different. Because this colloid is in the smaller range, it's gonna be more subject for diffusion. So Brownian motion is gonna make this colloid diffuse more, and potentially it may take more simulation time to get there, but actually the simulated time will be about the same. And you can see here, it's kind of far away, and it's kind of a little bit more wiggly trajectory, and it happens because the colloid has more diffusion. When the colloid goes closer and closer to the surface, it's going to start to diffuse back and forth, because the closer you get to the surface, the less drag is being experienced by the colloid. And this means that the diffusion is going to take over. And that's one of the reasons when you simulate a smaller colloid, it's going to take more time to actually simulate this trajectory. And also, because a smaller colloid demands a smaller time step. And everything is calculated internally, and you can actually look at the values. But right now, we're going to focus on the trajectory. And this may take a long time to actually attach, but take in mind this is a longer simulation time, but not simulated time. So because of the smaller time step and because of the wandering nature of this colloid. And you can see here, unfortunately, this colloid didn't even make it to the near surface. All the trajectory is in red. And if it goes too far away, the tangential velocity is going to push it around the collector, far away from the collector, and it may exit. So potentially this trajectory may take a really long time. So I may edit this video if that's needed. Okay, it seems that this colloid finally decided to get closer to the surface. Notice that how this trajectory is pretty, random, and that's by nature of diffusion. But now we have the colloid in the closer to 200 nanometer, and potentially van der Waals interactions is going to start like pushing more and more towards the surface of the collector, and hopefully it will attach. But I think the contrast is pretty clear compared with a bigger colloid. So the 4-micron colloid, because of its mass and its size, is less prone to be diffuse, while this smaller colloid, 440 nanometer colloid, has a lot of diffusion. And that's how these different transport mechanisms play a different role depending on colloid size. So it seems it's getting closer and closer. Now it's 100 nanometer. You can see here, it's 100 nanometer and getting closer. And the colloidal force start to get more and more attractive. So I hope this will attach. But it could diffuse back. Let's see. That's the nature of the stochastic diffusion. And that's one of the reasons that you need to simulate thousands of colloids to actually have a meaningful, representative statistical result when you do this kind of simulations. All right, let's wait a little bit more. And now we're getting into contact. And that's really good news. We're going to show here attachment, the same thing. The adhesive and repulsive forces are going to get into balance, and the colloid will immobilize. It may take a little bit more time because of the smaller time step that is scaled down with colloid size. But I can tell you for sure this is going to attach. Now, because of the really stronger colloidal forces, pretty much diffusion is neglected now, and it's going to immobilize there. So it's going to immobilize now, and there is all the figures that are going to be showing there, and this is going to be over just in a few seconds. The program is going to close some of the figures, and it's going to give you a message of simulation complete. There we go. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is open the two contact figures just to contrast. The one for the 4 micron, which is right here, favorable 4 micron, and then here we have the transport figure, and this is open. Now I'm gonna open the one for the 440 nanometer, and in the same directory, I think I did something wrong there, but never mind. Let me see. There we go. Favorable. So this is nested, doesn't matter. So transfer figure here, and I can compare both. I put it next to each other. Transfer figure there. All right. So look at the trajectory in the left. This is a big colloid, 4 micron colloid. So it's pretty smooth pretty much dominated by drag and sedimentation, and they go to the near surface and attaches. In the case of the 440 nanometer colloid, it goes to the near surface. It doesn't really reach the near surface, but closer to the surface, and start to diffuse back and forth, until, fortunately, randomly, it goes closer to the surface, and now the colloidal force becomes more significant and pull it towards the surface. Also, you can see in this paneling that shows the overall geometry, the attachment here occurs relatively fast. And for this one, taking in mind that this is actually a smaller one, diffusion is working against attachment for this particular case. You can have a different, another particle, the same size, but because of diffusion will attach faster. Okay, so you have more dispersion in this case because you have this smaller colloid. All right. So I think this pretty much ends this video, and we're gonna have following this series explaining for unfavorable conditions in the next videos. Thanks.